If you own any technology index fund, you are already holding a concentrated bet on a company most people have never heard of. Not Nvidia, not AMD, not any of the names on the earnings reports. A company in Taiwan with one primary manufacturing site inside a 100 to 60 kilometer strip of coastline that sits between the South China Sea and a geopolitical dispute that has been running for 70 years. The market is not pricing what happens if that strip of coastline becomes unreachable. Your index fund is. Every AI chip Nvidia designs, every chip AMD designs, every chip Apple designs for your phone is fabricated by one company, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC. Not one of several. Not the market leader among competitors, the only option at the process nodes where modern AI hardware lives. When Jensen Huang stands on a stage and announces a new GPU generation, TSMC already built it. The presentation is downstream of the supply chain. The supply chain runs through one address in Hsinchu, Taiwan. This is not the first time an entire industry ran through a single choke point nobody talked about. In 1973, the United States discovered it had built its entire economy on oil it did not control. The mechanism was the same, the warning signs were the same, the market ignored them the same way. Think about how a keystone works in an arch. Every stone in the arch transfers weight to every other stone, and all of it flows through the keystone at the top. Remove the keystone and the arch does not weaken gradually, it falls at once. The engineering term for this is a single point of failure. The financial term for it is concentration risk. The TSMC situation is both. The mechanism operates in 3 steps. Step 1. The entire AI semiconductor industry, Nvidia, AMD, Apple, Qualcomm, Google's custom silicon division outsourced fabrication because building and maintaining a leading-edge chip fab costs between $15 billion and $30 billion per facility, requires decades of institutional knowledge, and demands a workforce that takes a generation to train. No hyperscaler wanted to own that problem. TSMC became the answer for all of them simultaneously. Step 2. As process nodes advance from 28 nanometers to 7 nanometers to 3 nanometers, the capital requirements and the technical complexity compounded together. The gap between TSMC and the next best alternative, Samsung's foundry division, grew wider at each generation, not narrower. TSMC is now 2 to 3 years ahead of every other fabrication option on the planet for the chips that run large language models. Step 3. Every company that offloaded fabrication to TSMC also offloaded the knowledge of how to build it back. The institutional memory required to run a 3 nanometer process does not exist inside Nvidia. It does not exist inside any American company. It lives in Taiwan. The last time this mechanism ran at this scale, it took an embargo to make the dependency visible. By then, the economy was already inside the trap. In October of 1973, the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries cut oil exports to the United States. The embargo lasted 5 months. The price of oil quadrupled. The American economy, which had been expanding on the assumption that cheap energy was a permanent condition rather than a geopolitical favor, went into a contraction that lasted 2 years. What made it catastrophic was not the embargo itself. What made it catastrophic was the 30 years of infrastructure decisions, highway systems, suburban sprawl, industrial processes, heating systems that had been built on the assumption that the oil would always flow. The dependency was total. The visibility of the dependency was near zero until the supply stopped. The surface narrative in 1972 was that American industry was the most sophisticated in the world. That was accurate. What was also accurate, and not discussed, was that the energy running that industry came from a region with its own political calendar that did not align with American economic interests. The mechanism was concentration. The trigger was geopolitical. The outcome was a recession that reshaped American economic policy for a decade. The asset is different today. The concentration is the same. TSMC currently produces roughly 90% of the world's most advanced logic chips by volume. Not most, 90%. The entire AI infrastructure build-out, every data center Nvidia is supplying, Every GPU cluster, Microsoft and Google and Amazon are deploying runs on chips that came from one company's facilities in Taiwan. Intel's American fabs produce chips, but not at the process nodes where frontier AI hardware operates. The CHIPS Act allocated $52 billion to rebuild American semiconductor capacity. TSMC is building a facility in Arizona. The Arizona facility is projected to reach 3-nanometer production by 2028, 2 generations behind TSMC's current leading edge in Taiwan by the time it opens. The dependency is not being eliminated. It is being slowly, partially, expensively reduced. There is an honest acknowledgement to make here. The 1973 oil embargo involved a coordinated political decision by a coalition of states. A disruption to TSMC's operations could come from many sources: a military conflict, a natural disaster, a political decision by Beijing, or simply an accident inside a facility running processes so precise that a single vibration can destroy a production run. The parallel is not identical. The structural logic is the same: an entire industry built on the assumption that a supply it does not control will always be available. What the historical record does not promise is a date. The oil dependency ran for 30 years before the embargo. Concentration risk can persist longer than any reasonable investment horizon before it resolves. The 1973 investors who understood the dependency in 1968 did not profit from being right early. Being structurally correct and being right at the right moment are two different things. What the record does show consistently is that the moment the dependency becomes visible to everyone, the pricing correction is not gradual, it is sudden. The markets that mispriced the oil dependency in 1972 did not slowly reprice over several years. The correction happened in weeks. Right now, every major AI infrastructure build-out is being priced as though TSMC's Taiwanese facilities will continue operating without interruption. The market has assigned that probability a value close to certainty. The companies that built America's highway system in 1960 assigned cheap oil a similar probability. The arithmetic of what happens if that assumption is wrong is not being priced. It is being assumed away. You are not holding a diversified technology position. You are holding a concentrated bet that one company in one country on one island keeps the lights on. The mechanism does not care whether you understand it.